What's going on, football fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our preview for Monday Night Football between the Chiefs and the Jaguars. Gonna get you guys ready for all of your exposure tonight. With first off, look at the DFS slate and what I'm doing for my Draftkings lineups. That'll include a breakdown of an injury report, some of the scripts that we're expecting the field to go with, how to get different to the field, also some correlation notes you might want to consider when putting together your builds. And then afterwards, we're gonna focus on the pick'em and the prop side of things. It'll be on Underdog and Prize Picks, also some sportsbook exposure on sites like HardrockBet to give you an idea of not only some exposure that I'm entering tonight, but how I'm expecting this game to play out. So by the end, you'll have a game plan for all of your exposure, and we got a lot to go through, so let's not waste any time at all. Started off with first off, look at the DFS slate. We've got a healthy total of 45.5 points, not too high, not too low from that perspective, and also only a 3.5 point spread favoring Kansas City. So I think you're going to see a lot of wide open lineups. There's not going to be one piece of mega chalk, one kind of lineup construction that is far more popular than the next. I do think that maybe a 4-2 or a 3-3 lineup where the Chiefs are favored slightly, where your spend ups are coming from that side of things, might be the most popular kind of lineup construction that you see, but it's not going to be like everyone's playing 4-2 or 5-1 Chiefs lineups. It's also not going to be like a lot of people going to 4-2 or 5-1 Jaguars lineups. So if you're looking to get different to what the rest of the field is doing, it's play an outside game script. Go to a 5-1 for either team. If you want to get a little bit more differentiated about it, go to a 4-2 Jaguars lineup and take maybe an Etienne at that captain position. There are clear stands that you can make against what the rest of the field is doing to get different in those large field contests. And I'm talking about the contest with 50 to 100,000 other people that you're playing against. Those are more so the ones that you're worrying about with that game script. But overall, this is expected to be a relatively competitive game. I could see myself going in either direction for my single entry lineups as well, which in my opinion makes it a much more fun slate to play. I don't like when everyone's on that same kind of lineup construction and it feels impossible to get that differentiation. So that being said, let's start going player by player and give you an idea of how to deploy these different options. So first and foremost, we got Patty Mahomes at $10,600, who is over a 20 raw point projection. And you can see from the points per dollar perspective, dwarfs a lot of the players below him. You've got him at a 1.9x points per dollar mark, 1.3x and 1.4x for Brian Thomas Jr., and then Travis Etienne Jr. So you're going to see a lot of people starting with the Patty Mahomes, whether it's a captain or at flex, and that's why he's 88% projected owned. And you can see those two players below him have lower ownership combined than just a Patty Mahomes himself. So this is why I say that the Chiefs side is going to be a little bit more popular than what you have on the Jags, because when you're using a Patty Mahomes, you're not playing him by himself. He's not the kind of rushing quarterback that typically gets there without bringing along at least one pass catcher along with them. So those wide receivers, those tight ends, which are a little bit further down in the pricing, are also going to be paired up with the Mahomes quite often. So if you're starting with one of these two as your captain or as your top spend up at the flex position, that's why it could be a little bit different in those large field GPPs. You've got a Trevor Lawrence here at $9,200. Worth noting that even though he does have some rushing upside, just like a Patty Mahomes, you're going to want to pair him up with a pass catcher in most cases. So you'll see that with a lot of the field as well, and that's well warranted given the kind of correlation that you see between those players and some of those pass catching options. But a Travis Etienne Jr. is the kind of player that you'd go with if you're expecting a lower scoring game, maybe one won by the Jaguars and something like a 21 to maybe like 14 kind of winning score. In Etienne Jr., if he gets close to 100 all scrimmage yards, a touchdown, that could be enough to pay off that kind of price tag. So he's somebody that in my large field GPP exposure that I'm planning on using at that captain spot. A Brian Thomas Jr., I'm not sure if I can get there. He's had a horrendous start to this year, 1.3x points per dollar projection, and the fact that he's over $10,000 is just jarring given how he started the season. He has upside. I would say the one place you'd use him would be in those large field GPPs where that upside matters, but he's going to have to get you 100 yards, maybe a touchdown to get to the optimal lineup. And with a 45.5 point total, if this was expected to be a super low scoring game, I could see the PPR upside on a guy like BTJ, but not so much. And there's expected to be a pretty good amount of scoring on both sides. You've got Xavier Worthy at $8,800. He has the questionable tag, but it's worth noting that that is expected to be precautionary. And per some of the insiders close to the team, they've already said that he's fully expected to be playing tonight. So $8,800 at a 1.7x points per dollar projection, he's somebody that I'm prioritizing in some of my large field GPP exposure and in single entries in cash. Just one of the best plays that we have on the slate. So somebody that I'll be using well over the to field in my lineups. And if that Q tag is going to keep the ownership a little bit lower than it should be, then so be it. I'll take advantage of that in my exposure. And at captain, it's worth noting he's $13,200. He's got upside there as well. He's got big play upside written all over him. He also has a lot of PPR upside as he gets a lot of those screen passes in that Andy Reid offense. Overall, one of the best players that we have on the slate. And same thing with the Lawrence is worth noting for cash and single entries. He's got that 1.7x points per dollar projection. It's just like a Patty Mahomes at the top. Both of those players are priority in that sort of format. We've got a Travis Kelce at $7,600. He's at 1.7x points per dollar projection as well, but it's worth noting that his floor is a little bit lower than these other two players, so I would prefer these two options in those single entries or cash lineups. But in GPPs, Kelce is viable if he can get into the end zone, so he's no longer that elite threat that I would use at captain on this kind of a slate. Maybe in a large field GPP, because he's 9.8% owned, you could throw him in like 15 to 20% of your lineups at that captain spot, but even that, with what he's shown to start in 2025, might be asking a little bit too much. So more of a flex play for me on this kind of a slate. And same thing with a Hollywood Brown. And I would say that of all the players on the Chiefs, that Mahomes is probably my favorite captain, because it's hard to really believe that any of these wide receivers are going to go for 20 to 25 points. Now, in large field GPPs, there's always the off chance that they go for a touchdown or two, and that's their way to the optimal lineup. But that's where I would be using a player like a Hollywood Brown or a Travis Kelce at captain, not so much in a cash or a single entry kind of lineup. And you got a Travis Hunter here at $6,600. His floor is extremely low. In fact, we never really know how many snaps he's going to play on the offensive side. So he's only got an 8-point projection, 1.2x points per dollar efficiency, which is much lower than some of the other players around him, and hence why he's sub 20% owned. We got a Pacheco at $6,200. He's a solid play, but he's expected to give away some of his usage this week, not only to Kareem Hunt, but also to Brashard Smith, the rookie running back who has shown a lot of flash in his limited usage so far this year. You got a Harrison Butker at $5,400. Also, the other kicker on the other side, Cam Little at $5,000 at 1.6 points per dollar projection, also about 20% ownership. I think both are okay plays for tonight. The 45.5 point total is really the main reason for that. If we were at closer to a 41 or 42.5 point total, I wouldn't be that thrilled about kickers being 20% plus owned and only having a 1.6 points per dollar projection, but it's usable on this kind of a slate. Tyquan Thornton not seeing as many snaps now that Xavier Worthy is back. You've got a Juju Smith-Schuster who's mixing in. You've got other wide receivers like Hollywood Brown who are going to dominate those snaps. They run a lot of 2 tight end sets with Kelce and a Noah Gray on top of that, so he's more of a GPP flyer if anything. A Juju is a little bit of a safer PPR option, somebody that you could see yourself using in single entries or maybe in cash. Brendan Strange at $4,600. He's probably the best value that we have on the slate at nearly a 2x points per dollar projection. He's $4,600, so you're paying for him, right? He's not free or anything towards the bottom end of the board, but he's a quote-unquote safe option that you can use in those cash or single entry formats. The Chiefs defense are extremely usable tonight as well, in particular because Trevor Lawrence is a little bit turnover prone. $4,400, sub 20% ownership. So if you're looking to get different with the chalkier side of things, throwing in a Chiefs defense would be an easy way to do so. And maybe correlate that with one of the Chiefs running backs as your captain. Like that would be a game script where you're looking for a lower scoring game. The Chiefs to be leading by a touchdown or two. That would lead to extra usage for those Chiefs running backs. And maybe it could even be multiple of those Chiefs running backs and that Chiefs defense on top of it. Correlating, going for those outside game scripts is the best thing to do in those large field GPPs. And, I wouldn't be building that way if I was building for a single entry or a cash lineup, but there's a time and a place to be going to some of those, lower projecting, lower percentage outcomes that you have. Jaguars defense would certainly be one of those as well. They are $4,000. They're expected to be sub 10% owned at that flex position. So if you're really trying to force your hand in those large field GPPs, they would be one of the easiest pieces to do that with. And that would correlate with going with an Etienne captain, really just a Jaguars-led script to begin with. And don't forget, it's only a 3.5 point spread between these two teams, so it's not like we're expecting this to be a blowout towards the Chiefs side. So still well within the range of outcomes for Jaguars defense to get there. And for as great as Mahomes can be at spurts, he's also turnover prone at times, makes a lot of dumb decisions when throwing the ball. So would not surprise me if they got a turnover there, a few sacks as well. He holds onto the football sometimes a little bit longer than he should. A Parker Washington at $3,600. course, he's somebody that it's going to mix in for the Jaguars, but he's not one of those elite tier skill position guys that we're expecting to go off. More of just a GPP flyer, probably needs a touchdown to get to the optimal lineup. Brashard Smith, we mentioned that he's going to be getting some extra usage for the next couple weeks. He's shown some flash. I'm not expecting him to get more than 25 to 35% of the snaps though, so even then he's probably touchdown or bust. Toonen over here, he's also a young player that's shown a lot of flash to start 2025. He's expected to play a little bit more than Smith is, so that's why he's at a 2x points per dollar projection. If we're looking to punt it running back, I like Toonen a little bit more than I like a Smith. And the thing about Toonen as well that could be favorable if you're playing a Chiefs-led lineup is that he's got legit receiving upside out of that backfield. So if they get behind, if they're passing a little bit more in that kind of a script, that could be beneficial for his kind of game. You've got a Noah Gray at $2,400. He is always playable on Showdown when we have the Chiefs. They play a lot of 2 tight end sets, and in particular, he plays a lot in the red zone. And his main way to the optimal lineup, every once in a while, he'll get you like 5 catches for 50 yards, and that pays off $2,400 price tag. But most of the time, it's getting into the end zone. So when he plays in the red zone, when he gets those 2 tight end sets, it could be extremely valuable from that perspective. Adeyemi Brown is the best value play if you're going to a pure punt. Now, he's only $2,000. That's a lot of the savings. That's a lot of the upside of getting to that kind of a player. But he's at a 2.5 reception line, and he's juiced heavily towards the over. He's at 25 to 30 receiving yards in books, and I've seen some of them that have him heavily juiced towards the over as well. He's going to be involved, and that's why I'd prefer to go to him over a Parker Washington. They're essentially the same player. In fact, Adeyemi Brown has the better lines on a lot of the sports books, and he's yet $1,600 cheaper than we have than a Parker Washington. But the unfortunate aspect is that the rest of the field is going to see that. I'm not the only site that is going to be projecting Adeyemi Brown a little bit better than some of his other peers, and that's why the ownership's going to be so much higher. So I've got him at about 22.5% between both positions. A Parker Washington is only 9% between the two positions. So in GPPs, that's why I say like a player like Washington is viable. And just like we have only a 3.5 point spread favoring the Chiefs side, and they are by no means locks to win tonight, it's by no means a lock that Adeyemi Brown is going to have the better wide receiver production tonight. So don't sleep on a Parker Washington, but in your single entries in cash, it's going to be a lot of Adeyemi Brown for me. You've got a Hunter Long backup tight end for Jacksonville. He's at least going to be playing some snaps, but unlike the Chiefs, they don't involve their second tight end nearly as much. You've got a Tim Patrick going to at least or potentially be active, but we'll have to see. He's one of the few players that could be a healthy scratch tonight. A Johnny Munt also could be a healthy scratch, but at least in consideration for playing. And then Laquan Allen Jr., that is the third running back for Jacksonville. He's actually played this year, which a lot of third string running backs don't play all that often, but he's a big player, a touchdown or bust kind of a guy. So I'm more so looking at your Adeyemi Browns, your Noah Grace, if we're looking for some value, or for GPPs, a Parker Washington could make some sense. But these defenses, even though it is a 45.5 point total, it's healthy, it's higher than average, we'd say. From that perspective, I could easily see it being a pick six, some sacks, maybe an interception or a couple fumbles that gets one of these players to the optimal lineup. And especially that Jaguars side. I feel like everyone looks at Mahomes like he's this god at quarterback that never makes mistakes. That couldn't be further from the truth. You've seen him make some plays that make him look like a Geno Smith, that make him look like a Jets Sam Darnold from back in the day. If he does that and it ends up turning into 6 points going in the other direction, watch out. Could really crack that slate open. But that's what we've got from the Showdown side of things. And hope to see a lot of your names towards the top. And now for the pick'em and prop side of things, where I've got a couple props I've mixed in for tonight. They give you an idea of some exposure that I'm getting to. So first and foremost, we're going to start here on Prize Picks, which is where I took this for a 3x payout. So we're going to start with Patty Mahomes on the over on 20 fantasy score. I like his over on touchdowns. I like his over on yards today. I think in general, with the lack of efficiency that they've had out of the backfield, it's going to be a lot of Mahomes against that secondary that got roasted by the 49ers just last week. And the 49ers were without a lot of their top wide receivers. They had people banged up. Even the people that were active were 60-70% healthy at the very most, and they absolutely lit them up. So Patty Mahomes, whether it's on the ground, his rushing yard line is just towards the over. On sites like Pinnacle, he's like minus 130 towards the over. Even considered maybe taking him as the demon prop for the over on rushing touchdowns. 1.5 passing touchdowns is minus 155 towards the over. He's expected to be involved pretty much across the board tonight. So at 20 fantasy score, it's one of the better ways to get that exposure. he's got a higher line on Underdog, so the better place to play it comparatively is over here on Prize Picks. And unlike the sports books, where you can't play a prop like this on Fantasy Score, I'm taking advantage of that on Prize Picks. And you're going to see on the HardrockBet site, it's a little bit of a different prop that we're mixing in. But in general, I expect Mahomes to have a pretty solid game here on Monday Night Football, and you'll see that with some of the exposure that we're entering. On HardrockBet, I did take this for a plus 200 payout. It's over 32.5 passing attempts for Lawrence, which he's at 33.5 on Prize Picks. We'll mention that prop here in a second, but I did take the over 1.5 passing touchdowns here. So a Patty Mahomes minus 155 towards the over. It's more playable on a site like HardrockBet, where the single game parlay odds are actually pretty decent. Plus 200 is essentially a 3x payout like you're getting on Prize Picks or Underdog, and that's even despite this having a whole bunch of juice behind it. Whereas if we did that on a site like Prize Picks, just to show you what that would look like, this differential, it's only a 2.5x payout. So that's why if I'm going to enter something that's one of these like goblin props like you see on one of these pick'em sites, 99.99% of the time, the better place to take it is on the sports books if you have access to it. So that's why we're going with the Fantasy Score instead. It also gives us access to some of that rushing equity, but that over 1.5 passing touchdowns has a lot to do with how inefficient that rushing game has been. They have been horrendous. They're averaging like 3.5 rushing yards per attempt, whether it's a Hunt, whether it's Pacheco. I know they're going to try and use Smith a little bit more tonight to try and spur them on. I think it's going to be a whole lot of Patty Mahomes, whether it's passing for touchdowns, maybe even running one in the red zone, rather than having that rushing game do the job for them. That's what I'm thinking with that sort of a lean. And then on the other side, you can see we got 32.5 on HardrockBet. By the way, that is by far the best line that you have in the industry. He's at 33.5 at all the major books. He's juiced towards the over on a lot of them as well at 33.5. So even at this 33.5 number, this is value. I would take it. And when I saw it on HardrockBet, I jumped to go out there and take it for a little bit more units as well out here for our Monday Night Football slip. But at 33.5, he's minus 132 towards the over on FanDuel. And on a site like Pinnacle, which in my opinion is the sharpest of all the major books out there, he's at 33.5 and he's minus 140 plus towards the over. He was minus 142 the last time I saw it, but that was actually increasing in juice as the morning was going on. So they're expecting them to pass it a lot. Obviously, that Chiefs defense is one of the best units in the NFL. And even though I do think it's pretty close to a coin flip between these two teams, we have to respect that Vegas line. They've got the Chiefs as 3.5 point favorites. They're the team that has won the Super Bowls. The Jaguars haven't even come close to even getting close to winning a playoff game over the last 4 to 5 years. So I think there's a lot of what's the word for it? A lot of credence that we can give to that sort of a line. Like, they don't build those sports books off of losing bets. They have a pretty good track record over the last 20 or so years when it comes to setting those sort of a point spreads. So I'm going to take that with Trevor Lawrence. If they're going to be behind, they're going to have to pass the ball a little bit more. And then we can think about the correlation between these two props as well. I don't think there's a massive amount of correlation. There's usually more when it comes to a rushing attempt prop when we're trying to take correlation between two different sides. But let's say that Mahomes goes over his fantasy score. He throws for a couple touchdowns, puts up 30 to 40 rushing yards, 250 passing yards. It's the kind of game that I'm expecting from Mahomes tonight. That gives them a 2-touchdown lead. That means that Trevor Lawrence and that Jaguars team is going to have to air out the ball there in that second half. So that's kind of the idea with it. At 32.5, it's a no-brainer when it's one lower and it has that minus 130, minus 140 juice towards the over direction. And like I said, just make sure you're line shopping these goblin props. A lot of times on the sports books like Prize Picks and Underdog, they're really going to screw you when it comes to that payout. So that's the value of having access to both sorts of exposure like we have down here in Florida. We've got the pick'em sites. We do have only one sports book. It is only HardrockBet that we have access to, but it gives you more outs and it gives you more creative ways to get to that exposure. So that's what I've got for Monday Night Football. For every single piece of exposure that I'm entering, any slips on top of what we've already entered here, you guys can find that on my Patreon page as well, and with the spreadsheet that you guys saw there before. That, of course, is where you can find all my projections, my entire player pool for the slate. Over there, you can download that by joining the NFL DFS tier, and to get the Underdog and Prize Picks exposure and the HardrockBet exposure that I'm entering, that can be found on the NFL prop tier. But that's all I've got, guys. I appreciate you, and let's have ourselves a night. Go ahead and smash that like button if you guys haven't already, and also subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss any of the content to come. That will include our Thursday Night Football preview, also our main slate preview for Week 6 of the season, and all the content for the rest of the season to come. But hopefully we can go out there and make this Monday Night Football a good one. Hope to see a lot of your names towards the top end of those GPPs, and of course on the prop and the betting side of things, let's cash out, add to the bankroll, and get ourselves moving into the rest of this year. But that's all, guys. I appreciate your support in the channel as per usual. Best of luck with everything, and I'll see you guys out there for Thursday night.